Hello everybody, I hope you're having a good day. Today I'm going to be talking about the treasure spawn that just came out for Fullmetal Alchemist and this legendary man right here called Scar. Now, I wasn't sure what they were going to do with him, but I didn't think for any reason possible that he was going to be overpowered. I was wrong about that. Alright, so let's go over why he's overpowered. To first start off, he's the star element. Star elements are meta element. I'm not going to say they're meta monsters. You should grab your star monster. Star monsters are always recommended regardless of their abilities. No, it's not going to work that way. Star monsters are meta elements, not meta monsters. Meta elements being like they're the element you want to have because they're the only element in the game that has two strengths. That means two other elements are weak to Star themselves. Oh, I just pretty much said the same thing. But anyways, going on from there. Why I'm saying that is going to be very useful for whether you're doing elemental advantage battles with Unison battles and you're using elemental advantage, because there's a lot of people who still use light and dark till this day, like a lot of people, or you're dealing with a monster that's pretty strong and you want to do some extra damage as well. Because if you look at Scar, he does slightly less than Tristan, and Tristan can do a lot, so Star's going to do some damage. And because he's a star, Scar is a star, he's also going to have a little more strengths than other elements. So that is very essential right there. He is 35 cost, so he's up to date. He's one of the few 35 cost on top of all that I just said that has potential awakening. So you could also add some more score on top of what he's already got going. So that is very good. But it only increases by 5k. It doesn't increase by 6 or 7k or whatever they're planning in the future for 35 cost awakening or potential count. Anyways, going on from there, his ability is really strong too. Talk about that in a second. Anyways, going on from there, removes awakening standby mode from all enemies. Now, if you're unaware what awakening standby mode is awakening, you can find this in the menu. Go to help and go to buffs. Awakening is something that it has a requirement before it can activate regardless of whether it's cast or not. So if you cast Napoleon, the person who casts Napoleon is instantly going to get awakening because it damages 40% of their HP, and you need to have 60% or lower HP for awakening to activate. You don't need to be damaged as soon as awakening activates. You just need to have 60% HP or lower for awakening to activate. If you don't have it and it's cast, then it's in awakening standby mode. It's not you're not awakened yet. You will not see the circle, you will not see the buff, you will not see anything. You need to have 60% or lower HP for awakening to activate, even if you manage to cast it. And the only monster that can do that right off the bat is Aquarius. That's why Aquarius is OP. That's why I always talk about Aquarius, because Aquarius is the only monster that can instantly activate that awakening. All the other monsters in the game cannot activate that awakening. Anyways, going on from there, that's what awakening standby mode is. That's what it does, and it's pretty OP. It removes debuffs from all enemies. That's not worrisome, and I'll talk about that in a second. Removes damage reduction from all enemies. Removes damage reflection from all enemies. So if you have awakening activated, I think it gets removed from the awakening. I'm not sure. Cast karma. So if you have buffs, they turn to debuffs. So pretty much this monster will leave you buffless, regardless of whether it takes away your debuffs. You might say, thanks Scar, you took away my debuffs. It's going to leave you buffless, and it's going to do something a lot more devastating. I'll talk about in a second. I already talked about the ability power, so I'm going to skip that one. It boosts by 10 for each increase in skill level though, so that's good. Cast Frenzy, so you don't got to worry about the status alignments and debuffs. So this could be it could be a potential monster for player versus enemy late game. And then here's where the devastating part comes in for this monster. Cast Destructive Collapse, which nullifies all buffs on enemy field for 60 seconds. Now, if you're unaware how this works, this is going to be a highly estimated guess. This is not going to be a 100%, but this is going to be, I'd say, close to 100%. Anyways, going on from there, if you're unaware on how Nullify works in this game, I was confused last time I talked about Nullify, so thanks to my young boy Miyashi, I know how to deal with that. He cast Hero, and Hero helps me understand thanks to Hero, I can understand the nullify system within this game, because some games work a lot differently, and I played a crap ton of games when I was younger, so I didn't really know how it was going to work out. But now that I do, now that I have Hero and I casted it to see how it's going to work, nullify pretty much works out. It removes and nullifies. Like, so if you have it activated, let's say if you have buffs activated, like you have 10% magic attack and 10% attack, way before anybody even activates this destructive collapse. As soon as this destructive collapse activates, as soon as it does, it's removed, and you cannot bring it back at all for the full 60 seconds of this buff, this field debuff. So if you're trying to reactivate it even after it's open or the field debuff is active, it's not going to work. You can't. There's no buffs involved. You cannot buff at all. 0. Now, there is an exception to this, and the exception is Hero and Frenzy are automatically exceptions, I think, because they nullify status alignments and debuffs. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're going to be unaffected either way. As for Awakening and not Frenzy, but Awakening and Beast, they're both like in between. They're yes and no's. The reason I'm saying that is you already checked Awakening before. I already showed Awakening. If you want to go back and check Awakening, if you don't believe me, you could go back and check Awakening. Awakening has this as well as one of in their description. Some of Beast effects can be removed by ability and Unison attacks that have buff removing effects. Pretty much talking about the status buffs like the attack and magic attack. So that stuff will be removed as soon as, well, I'm not going to say it will be removed, but to my hypothesis, I'd say this is probably going to be true. I'm not going to say it's definitely true, but as far as I understand this game, as far as I know, this should happen. The buffs, not like everything off of Frenzy and not Frenzy, I keep saying Frenzy, not everything off of Awakening and Beast will be removed, but pretty much the stuff like the magic attack and attack increase, or perhaps the increase stats of all allies, not all allies, increase all stats by 50% for 60 seconds, and then like the increased critical chance, and then the ability power, the stuff that would be counted as regular buffs, but thanks to Awakening they could stack, or Beast they could stack. That stuff right there will be removed as soon as you activate the nullification of the destructive collapse field debuff right here. So this is a very good buff to have, or a debuff to have in player versus enemy. Really strong. Whether you're dealing with someone that hits fast or hits heavy, which is very likely going to happen when you're late game, activating this will help, because it will not allow them to buff no matter how many times they try, because you know they're going to try to buff themselves as much as possible, and they have like random attacks that barely do any damage that buff them. Like almost most of what they have in their arsenal is going to buff them, and that pretty much prevents them from buffing themselves no matter how many times they attack, no matter how many times they try, no matter how many times anything. You don't have to reduce CPU action speed, you don't have to do any of that stuff. This monster will help prevent them from buffing themselves any further, so you can just stack those debuffs, do massive amounts of damage, stack massive amounts, and pretty much they ain't gonna be doing jack unless they're doing a percentage attack. A percentage attack being like something, no matter what, it always takes a percentage of your health, and even then you probably got a cleric to save yourself, and then you can keep going and going and going as long as this field debuff doesn't run out during that time. So it is very, very strong, very, very OP, and I definitely recommend it for player versus enemy. On top of it, if you get it to its second awakening, it already does the decreased stats of all enemies by 40% for 60 seconds. So right after that destructive collapse activates, it gives you a little start off test, so that way you could start off pretty well. It already decreases their stats by 40% for 60 seconds on top of that, so you got something to start off after you activate that. That would really be devastating to the enemy team and really draw them back, especially in player versus enemy. Can this be used in Coliseum? Definitely. It's not top tier. Nowhere is it near top tier, and not like the highly recommended monster for Coliseum. It can be used for Coliseum. It can be helpful. I'd say it's a situational monster. I'm not going to say it's an overall excellent performance monster for Coliseum or top tier or anything like that. As for guild battles, this is more of a hit or miss monster. For A ranks and lowers, this monster can be very helpful for ranked guild battles. Not as helpful as player versus player, but it can be very helpful for ranked guild battles. Not ranked guild battles, but guild battles in general. As for S rank and higher, that's not the same case. The reason for that being is if you're unaware how field debuffs and field buffs work, as far as I know, as far as I remember, as far as I can perceive, you can only have one field buff or debuff on one side and then one field or debuff on the other side. So with that being said, when you're dealing with the late S rank, or pretty much I think almost any S rank, as long as they didn't just come from A rank, they're gonna have stuff like Liatsu, Romaru, and Misunari. Those monsters cast field buffs for themselves, and with that being said, it can remove the field debuff and boom, just like that, it never happened. You worked so hard, you used all your effort to get Scar on the field, pretty much make sure they can't buff themselves, and all they have to do is pop a Romaru, pop a Liatsu, or pop a Misunari, and bam, just like that, all your hard work and effort is pretty much useless. They can only have one field debuff and buff on the other side. I know I said this, in one field debuff on the other side, so pretty much Romaru has a field buff, Liatsu has a field buff, and Misunari has a field buff, and their field buffs pretty much, no matter what person you bring in, it will stay active. So when you're dealing with Crystal Assault, if you run out of cost on that stuff, or perhaps you really can't attack at all, once you switch in, you have something that actually counts as a buff towards yourself, regardless of whether you switched in or switched out. So it's very helpful. It's a great switch buff as well, and it just helps correlate the team so freaking well that people use it all over the board when you're dealing with like hardcore S rank guilds. So they're gonna have these monsters, they're going to use them, and you can bet they have lots of these monsters in their arsenal. So even if you manage to cast this, it's probably going to be useless when you're dealing with S rank, because they have these monsters in their arsenal, and that's pretty much how it's going to go down. Anyways, with that being said, let's talk about the treasure spawns rates real quick. Okay, so there's no way you're getting this to the gear, 5.98% chance, and they have no rates up whatsoever on this stuff. Unless they're lying about this and some glitch happened, it's not going to happen. As far as I could see, I'm looking at their statistics right here and their info. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get it through the gear spawn. There's no way possible. As for the jackpot, just the jackpot, I'm not talking about the medals right now. Summoning scrolls are probably going to have the least amount of rates. And they also have Edward's outfit. I have no clue the rates on that. It's not going to be crappy as the summoning scroll. You probably might get Edward's outfit like maybe like a 1 out of 4 jackpots. Other than that, you're probably going to be getting treasure medals. The treasure medal amount is low, so it's not exactly fair. You're only going to be getting around like 1,200 medals throughout the whole, like, not just the jackpot, but like the whole treasure box. Like if you're going to roll over 6, you're going to only get 1,200 plus 50 to 200. So there's a lot of gems involved with that before you can even get 10k medals to get the scroll or whatever you're getting. And in the treasure spawn, they do have a very selection of stuff you can use, and this stuff is going to be very useful whether you're dealing with health regen or you want to use reflect damage. This stuff's going to be useful in Coliseum and when you're doing dual rooms, because each and every round that you restart, all the stuff activates or reactivates. So it is very useful, and I could recommend it, but again, you're not going to be getting a lot of medals, so this treasure spawn is definitely by far a pay to win. They know how OP Scar is, and they know how valuable he is, so I guess they really want to push that so that way they could get money. Kind of greedy, but at the same time, no, it's kind of greedy. That being said, if you don't have the gems, you're gonna need at least a couple hundred. If you ain't got a couple hundred gems, I would definitely not recommend this. If you really want Edward's outfit, just honestly get the cosmetic medals and just use them. Don't worry about the spawn. I wouldn't recommend this spawn. This spawn is hecka pay to win. This is one of the more pay to win treasure spawns by far. So monster is super OP and very, very good. but the spawn is very costly in exchange. So if you're not extremely pay to win, I won't really recommend it. With that being said, I hope this helped out, and I will see you in the next video. This is the AzureWrath. I'm out. Peace.